What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So today we got two new big releases that came out today: The Many Saints of Newark and The Guilty. Well, technically three big new releases because we had Venom 2 that also released today, but I hopefully to get a review out tomorrow when I go and see it. But for The Many Saints of Newark and The Guilty, this will be a spoiler-free review for both. Before we get into it, please make sure to like the video like always, and please make sure to subscribe if you like keeping up on new movies, TV shows, we do all that stuff. But let's start with The Many Saints of Newark. So I think it's good for you guys to know that I am a huge Sopranos fan. The Sopranos is my favorite TV show of all time. I remember when I watched it a couple of years ago, I just fell in love with it. You know, I'm half Italian as well, so the whole Italian side and the whole narrative is something I really enjoy. So with Many Saints of Newark, it came with some pretty high expectations, you know, somewhat high. I wasn't really expecting too much. I wasn't expecting it to blow me out of the way. I just wanted them to pay homage to these characters and these stories. And I'll tell you if they did that or not. But it was directed by Alan Taylor, who you might know. He directed some episodes of Sopranos. But also known for directing Thor: The Dark World and Terminator Genesis. So his filmography isn't too reputable. But, you know, I actually didn't know he directed those movies before watching this. It was only until after I looked it up and I saw it was Alan Taylor. I was like, why would they choose him to direct this? But he did direct some episodes, so it makes sense for them to bring him back on for this project. And I also want to point out that the movie does give spoilers for the Sopranos TV show. At least one big thing I noticed. So if you haven't watched the Sopranos TV show yet and you do plan on watching it, I don't recommend watching this movie first and then watching Sopranos. You know, sometimes with in chronological order, you can watch, you know, a prequel and then go into the sequels, and there's not really much spoilers. Right off the bat, this gives a big spoiler for the TV show, so I just want to let you guys know that. Before the story, it's kind of about what they promote it to be, right? It's the upbringing of Tony Soprano and how he became what we see him as in the Sopranos TV show. It's more of a focus on Dickie Montesanti, who you might know if you've seen the TV show, is Christopher Montesanti's father. And it's pretty much just about rival gangs starting to, you know, come up while the DeMio family are still in power. But like I said, I'm a big fan of Sopranos, so seeing our usual gang come back was really fun to see. You know, we got Big Pussy, we got Paulie, we got Silvio. And it was just really nice to see those guys again, even though they are played by different actors. So whenever there's any sort of memorable character played by a different actor, there is some sort of like nitpicking that comes with that. Like Silvio is my favorite character. So when this new actor comes and he's trying to be Silvio, like, you know, he's got the face on, he's trying to do the whole thing. I was like, who is this guy? Come on, this ain't Silvio. And I, like, same with Paulie, I was like, I'm not really buying it. But I will say that throughout the movie, they do get better, and it's funny to see their mannerisms. And these guys, I think they do a good job, actually. By the end, I did enjoy Silvio and Paulie's performance the best. Pussy looks a little bit different. You know, he's not showcased as much as Paulie and Silvio. But I will say that at first, I was like, come on, these guys aren't them. But then by the end, I was like, you know what, they did a good job, and I was just happy to see them. But the movie is mostly focused on Dickie Montesanti, who we didn't really get to see at all in the Sopranos TV show. So it's cool to see him showcased in this movie a lot. And I thought he was a great character. I thought he was a really great character. He was played by Alessandro Nivola, I think it's how it's pronounced. And I thought the actor did a great job of playing him. It was really interesting. But obviously all eyes were on Michael Gandolfini, as he's reprising the role of James Gandolfini, who's such a great actor, especially played Tony Soprano. So he's most memorable for So Iconic. So having Michael Gandolfini coming back, you know, was obviously we're all like, oh my god, it's so cool to see. But this is also his first performance, so can he really do that character justice? And I'm glad to say that he did. He does such a great job. I could actually feel that it looked like he looks just like his father. First of all, there were some scenes where I was literally like, oh my god, like that's Gandolfini. Like he looks just like his father. You know, so that was really nice to see. But I think he does the character great. He's got the same lisp. He's got the same sort of, like, he sits back and he looks just like him. And I thought Tony Soprano, the character, he was good. I mean, it's kind of really wasn't Tony Soprano focused, but it really was, you know, there's enough scenes to where you get enough Tony Soprano to where you're not disappointed. But that being said, the whole first half, it's Gandolfini, Michael Gandolfini is not really in it. It's really much younger, Tony Soprano. And that's kind of like where my negatives lie. I'll tell you guys right now, my big negative. And so my big negative with the movie is that the first half was just sort of boring. There's no other way to put it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it has its entertaining moments. And obviously, as a big Sopranos fan, like, it kept me watching. You know, it wasn't terrible, but it was just sort of like, I was like, like, this isn't really doing much for me. And the real conflict doesn't even start until over an hour into the movie is when it's like, okay, now this is starting to get interesting. For that first half, there was interesting elements here and there, but as a whole, it just wasn't anything I was so, you know, too impressed by. It didn't pull me in. And so obviously another character I got to put out there is John Bernthal. He plays Tony Soprano's father. I think John Bernthal is such a great actor. We all know him as the Punisher, and he's been in Wolf of Wall Street, Wind River, the list goes on. I think he's such a great actor. And it's cool to see him playing Tony Soprano's father it's a good role for him, but I just think he's underutilized. I wish they kind of showcase his acting range more in this movie, because like I said, I think he's such a great actor that they could have used some cool moments maybe between him and Tony Soprano that would have went a long way for the movie. But like I said, like I'm always happy to see him on screen. He always does a great job, but I do feel like he was underutilized in this. So when you're dealing with any sort of beloved franchise, right, or any sort of, when you're trying to revitalize this beloved thing, there's certain expectations that come with that, right? There's like more than other movies, fans that might nitpick it a little bit more because they expect, you know, for you to do it a certain way, for you to pay homage to these characters in a certain way. Because, you know, iconic characters like Silvio and Tony Soprano and Paulie, when you're putting different actors in those characters' shoes, there's going to be nitpicking, there's going to be, fans are going to want it to be done in a certain way, right? And so I just wanted to point that out because, you know, we've seen it like in Star Wars, or what's another revitalized franchise? I mean, Terminator, but now they're doing Predator. Like, there's, fans will nitpick it more, right? That's all I wanted to say. But I thought, it doesn't really have the same feel as the Sopranos TV show, right? It doesn't. But I think the costumes were good and the atmosphere was good. It feels like a prequel to that Sopranos universe. But it's the story and the characters, obviously, you can't live up to what the Sopranos TV show was. Like, you just can't. And I knew it wasn't going to be like that. So, you know, that's why I'm trying to say that the movie was what I expected it to be, and I did end up enjoying it, especially the ending. If you've seen it already, the ending gave me chills. I was so excited, so happy about that ending. It was really great, and I kind of wish I saw that ending in theaters. That's how great it was. So, because of that very satisfying ending and the fact that the second half was able to pull itself together and make the movie interesting and good, I'm going to give you guys my rating right now. I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 5. So overall, the first half was okay, but because the second half was so good and with a really good ending, it elevated to a movie that I enjoyed and I ended up liking. So now on to The Guilty, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. This is based off a remake of the 2018 Danish film with the same name, The Guilty. And so let me give you guys my thoughts on the original. You know, I just watched it last night, and I thought it was super good. I thought it was so good. Unique, original story. We see it through the eyes of the dispatcher. That's what the story's about. I don't want to spoil the story at all. I actually think going into both these movies blind if you plan on watching both, because the story is really shocking. There's a lot of twists, and all you need to know is that it's just another dispatcher movie, but with a really different sort of story on it. And I think we've seen a couple of dispatcher movies, right? We had The Call with Halle Berry, and there's a couple of other famous ones. But I think this was the best. Even both these were. Well, I'm not gonna. The original was really good. I'll say that right now. The original did it in a way to where we only see the POV of the dispatcher. We don't see anything else, and I thought that was really compelling, engaging. And it was just really impressive. Just worked like really well. And so the original, now this new one, the Jake Gyllenhaal one, follows the same story as the original, just more Americanized. If you've seen the Funny Games remake, it's not as cut and paste as Funny Games. If you've seen the original German one and the new one, it's pretty much a cut and paste, same story, same cadences, everything. With this one, it's not really like that. It's the same story and like the same character, but they do add some new scenes. They kind of add more to the main character. They kind of show some of the stuff that actually goes on, and there's a whole new family element to it, and they just kind of added a little bit too much. I think it hurt the film overall by doing that. But so the movie does take place in Los Angeles. It's directed by Antoine Fuqua, and he also directed Training Day. You got Southpaw, The Equalizer, some other notable ones. And so the movie starts out pretty fast. I think they had some pacing issues in the beginning. It just felt unimportant, like just the way that it was all rushed. It was kind of like they were just like trying to rush the beginning part because they know that the main conflict is like what everyone's watching for, and that's like the main interesting part of the story. So it just felt like it was rushed just to get to that main conflict, where the original kind of like took its time in a much better way. But once we do get to that conflict, like, it's worth it because the story is so good. It's so shocking. There's so many twists, and it's just a lot more interesting. So this review comes from someone who saw the original like literally the night before watching this. So for me, I just kept comparing it to the original, right? And so I was able to realize, like, okay, this story is super good. It gets really good, so that for someone who's not familiar with the original story, they will be shocked and very engaged with these twists of the story because it really is that good. And it's not as engaging as the original. I don't think they actually directed or do the dispatcher POV like anywhere near as good as the original, and I think that hurt it. Jake Gyllenhaal, his performance, I think he's always good. I think he's one of the best actors of the modern time. Like, he's one of the best actors working today. And I don't think it's his fault what they do with his character. I think he played this character well. but they just made him a little bit too aggressive here. Like, he was aggressive in the last movie, but more subtle. And this one, he's just sort of out there, and it comes a little bit comedic at times, which I didn't really like. I think they just changed the character up a little bit too much. They kind of add this whole like family element to it, where he was like they like cut away from the main conflict, which is, like I said, one of the most important parts, engaging parts of the movie, and they kind of cuts like this family element that I just didn't care for. You know, it was something that wasn't in the original film, and they just added it here to maybe to add more depth to his character, and I just don't think it works for me. But I do think it's really cool that these stories are being told like through the POV of the dispatcher job. I kind of had a similar. I was once a dispatcher once, not for the police, in a more subtle sort of like little role. But I know how nerve-wracking it could be when you're just on the call and like something crazy could be going on. Obviously, I didn't do anything as crazy as what happens in this movie, but I just think it's pretty cool to see like, you know, the crazy stuff we see in movies like through the eyes of what the dispatcher sees and what that person's really going through. And this movie is able to depict that pretty well. So I want to give you guys my rating for it right now. I'm going to give it a 3.1 out of 5. The original is a lot better. If I had to recommend one for you guys to watch, I'd obviously say to watch the original. But the movie is decent enough, and for American audiences who don't want to go and watch a Danish film and just watch this, they will probably enjoy it more than I did because, you know, the story is new for them, and the story really is worth the watch. Like, this is worth the watch just for the story alone, because I do think it's very well done. It's very cool. I just think they kind of changed it a little bit too much here and there to where it just sort of lost itself. And so that's it. But I want to know if you've watched this or if you plan on watching it and you haven't seen the original, like what you think of it. Because I'm actually really interested to see if you liked it a lot more than I did, or if you kind of had the same thoughts or whatever. But like always, please make sure you like this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new here. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you in the next video.